Hello and welcome to Dicepunks, a tabletop role-playing podcast where we focus on playing full campaigns in less well-known systems. This week in episode 19, the Fermatans face potential disaster dealing with their diplomatic guests. Hello and welcome. I'm Adam, your friendly neighborhood game master, and joining me
I am Drew, and I'm playing Dosk Tyr, Regal of Nothing, and Good Faith Ambassador for the literal powers of actual darkness.
I'm Robin, and I'll be playing Lyssa Crate, the hospitable and huggable Duchess of Fury.
I'm sorry, that was very good, and I don't mean to cut us off, but that was really good.
Thank you. I enjoyed watching you just absolutely shut down there for a second.
I'm Dez, and I will be playing Ramnet, who, though he is a civil servant, very importantly for this episode, he's
Excellent,
not a
thank
butler.
you. Before we get started, though, let's briefly recap any character stat growth and the events of the previous episode for ourselves and our listeners. So let's begin. Dez, you have your lore roll for XP.
Yep. And that is a pair of ones.
That will do it.
God bless minimally sufficient success. So, with my 6 XP, I am going to skip right past an expert die in stealth and go from 2 in stealth to 1 plus a master die.
I suppose it would seem that it is. I suppose it would seem that Ramnet has been practicing a lot avoiding the acolytes while our nobilis have been gone.
There's something just delicious about the idea of a guy with smoking void skull going unnoticed.
If there is anywhere that it would be easiest, Fermata is that place.
Yeah, really.
Any other XP expenditures before we get started?
Yeah, I think I am going to spend 2 mortal XP points to get better at lying, which in a diplomatic moment such as the one in which we currently find ourselves just might come in handy.
Indeed, it might. Well, and to remind us of the situation in which you find yourselves, I believe our recap falls to Lyssa this time.
Thanks, Hollyhock God. After doing fabulous work as Robnet's substitute, I was greeted by a delegation and the visage of 2 fellow nobles. I admit I was a bit off-balanced. It had never occurred to me that others could just show up in Fermata. And I recall from dealing with my family that there was an expected decorum when it comes to politicking. So I took their arms and invited them out for a drink. Thankfully, that seemed to go over well, and Dosk, Ramnet, and Apatia were not far behind in joining us for this peace talk pigging out. Apatia was giddy off of blood. She says that the medic is fine, so all is well, I suppose, assuming that all matters were consensual. We invited our guests back to our manor. Ia told me, rather concerningly, that she had to speak with me privately about the ocean. I agreed and tucked Apatia in as best I could and resigned myself to sleep. Little did I know, as I rested, 2 of Ia's attendants went missing.
And that was information that you found out at the very end of last session, as the house was stirring. Ia is concernedly reporting to Dosk and Lyssa that 2 of their attendants are missing, and that is exactly where we pick back up. Dosk emerging from his bedchamber with Apatia, and being faced with this unsettling information. Ia does not immediately elaborate.
Can I immediately roll lie to look surprised?
Yes, you may. Immediately roll Y to look surprised. That's going to be 6 dice for you.
To feign
since you have rested.
Now, obviously, some portion of this is surprising, but given the conversation I was just having with Apatia, a poker face is important here. So you could also call this perhaps a Grace's roll, but I want to flex my lie muscles, so let's do that.
Yeah, I think it falls under lie. Go for it.
That is a pair of 6s.
No, I believe that's a pair of 7s because you are striking sad boy.
Man, less than a few minutes into this episode, and we already got him to say it.
I'm having a good day.
I mean, I aim to please. So, what is your response with your successful?
I think I play the gracious host, and I think my response is that this is unprecedented. Every good lie has a grain of truth, so we've never had anyone go missing while staying in our esteemed house, and I just can't imagine. That last part is the part that's a lie. So I think my goal then is to.
Because your imagination is very good.
So I think I assure you that we are going to do everything we can to, of course, find the missing attendants at once. That part's not a lie.
Ia nods slowly and seems to choose her words carefully. She says, "Were this Sirtha, I could divine their locations, but in this darkness and in this strange chancel, I fear that I will be almost useless. I do hope they are okay and that you will return them to us forthwith." She wears a troubled expression as she sort of turns and broods back toward the chamber that you had set her up in.
I give a very nearly imperceptible bow, having still absorbed and never been corrected on the point that that's what they do in their culture. And I say, forthwith. And as she goes, I turn to Apatia and say, do you, when I'm certain that Ia is out of earshot, do you perhaps know what happened here?
She looks perplexed and she says, "I think she just told you. 2 people went missing."
Can I divine?
Blessedly free of subject.
Nothing would go over my head. I would catch it. Yeah, sure. Can I divine where they are since this is home turf? Or would I need to know more about like how differentiated were they in my head, right? Like to what degree can I ping them?
Yeah. I feel like using lesser divination of realm, you can at least try. You probably won't be able to sort of be like, where are the missing attendants? But you can be like, where are all of the Sirthans?
Okay.
And if there are 2 that are at the bottom of a well or something.
That's a start, yeah.
Hanging out with truth.
If there are two that seem to be in the stomach of someone in this room, then yeah, mystery solved.
2 in the laboratories.
So yeah, you can do a realm divination for free there. As has become my wont in this campaign, though, I am going to ask you to make a roll on top of that. So, as always, miracles that you can afford just work unless opposed by a Noctoritas or another miracle. But there can be a degree here. So, I am going to ask you to roll a sense plus eerie, which is going to be just 2 dice.
Yeah, when he says plus eerie, that adds nothing whatsoever.
Eerie.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. Sense plus eerie.
None whatsoever.
Well, here's open. Oh, 2 4s.
Nice. So, as I intimated, a lesser divination of realm is not really enough to give you detailed or specific information, but you pretty immediately sense that there are 16 of these Sirthans.
Thus ends the information.
Yes, although it should be noted that there were 18 attendants and 2 nobilis. You are only able to confirm in Fermata the presence of 16
Sirthans total.
Sirthans. Yeah.
Meaning we've lost 4. Well, let's not say lost. There are 4 unaccounted for.
In your divination, yes.
Okay.
Allow me to restate. Ia,
Okay.
Rimush, 18 attendants. You can divine 16 people currently in Fermata who are not from Fermata. For these purposes, the 2 of you count as from Fermata.
Mm-hmm.
How quickly we go native. Okay, so that raises further
Yeah,
questions.
something about having the Imperator's soul jammed into yours tends to
really
link you to a place.
Yeah, really gets you. Really makes you feel like it's home.
You have been forcibly naturalized.
Oh, I would that history were not full of such happenings. Okay, so I think our next move is that multiple heads are going to be better than the number of heads currently at play, and I think we need to go to Lissa and figure out our next move.
I'm still asleep, for the record.
Okay. I had in my head that you were there, but I like this better.
No, I think we ended last time with Ia knocking on Dosk's door. So Lissa is sprawled out, hair going everywhere, probably a stream of spittle coming out of her mouth because she is sleeping hard.
Doing her absolute best to take out the entire surface area of a 100 square foot bed.
Yes. Yeah. You know it. Full on starfish.
Yeah.
Aspect of starfish.
So I guess this only really matters if either you barge in or you knock and Lissa does not wake up to answer the door.
I mean, let's have some fun. I knock. Let's see what happens.
You hear the distant sounds of not quite snoring.
Not quite thunder.
Yes.
I knock a little harder.
You hear the sounds of not quite snoring stop in a sudden snort, and then muttering as though someone is trying to get their bearings.
Okay, yeah. So
I was going to say, there's a chance here that in 10 minutes we have Dosk rolling his one body pool to knock as hard as he can.
and then Dosk shatters like a fragile piece of china against Lissa's door. End of Dosk. That was not canon.
Oh,
I know,
Remnant would be so sad.
Okay, we're not going to do that. Instead, I call through the door and say, I don't mean to get you up, but we may have a situation that may require your attention.
Before you can finish speaking, the door flies open. I'm just wearing a sheet. What's going on?
Hi. Good morning. It seems that we have some missing Sirthans. Can we come in?
Yes, of course.
The patient nods when you ask, can we come in?
I quickly wipe my mouth off.
So I explain the situation. Both what he had told me and the fact that my own divinations tell me that the situation might be either worse or at the very least stranger than we first might have thought.
Can I also do a divination?
Check my math for sure.
Well, I'm not going to check the math because any confusion on my end is likely due to dyscalculia. But I would like to see if I can divine the locations of any recent deaths in Fermata.
Ooh.
Okay. That feels like a real sort of border case between learning about your realm or asking your realm about something. So I can't make any guarantees about the information you're going to get without spending miracle points. But if you want to do a level 2 divination here, we can have you roll to see what you're able to glean from the information that you get, inchoate as it might be.
I should be able to afford a level 2, because my realm is at 2, right?
Yes, your realm is at 2. I was saying that it's in the edge of a level 2 versus a level 5 realm miracle.
Okay, I will just do
it's sort of on the
2.
bubble. Okay. So as always, miracle goes off, but I would like you. I will be at least a little bit generous here. Sense plus Eerie would be an unrollable success for you.
Mm-hmm.
So let's go with Sense plus Empathy. But just know that there is a minimum height required.
And no matches.
Okay. So you get the same information, basically, that was available to Dosk. You're looking for different things, and so you just kind of perceive, to some degree, like almost like you could draw a approximate bar graph of births and deaths in Fermata over the past 24 hours. But you can't really pinpoint, one from the other. Now, this is the point at which my lack of knowledge about sociology and demography comes forward. You're not actually sure. I think Lissa would probably also be pretty ignorant here of how unusual it is to have this particular number of deaths and this particular number of births in a city in a day. There are slightly more deaths than births, but they are not immensely divergent, and the numbers don't seem like outlandishly huge. Although you come to think of it, aren't sure what the population of Fermata in total is. It's big. By your standards. Maybe not as big as Caliban, but somewhere closer to that than towns in the Vale.
I relay that information to Dosk, but also get very depressed thinking about the fact that there are constantly people dying.
I'm on the back foot with that for a moment, then I say probably best not to dwell on it. Okay. A place to begin. Wait,
I have another idea.
Please.
I turn to Apatia. My dear Lady of Sensation, can you see if anyone has experienced pain here recently? Is that a sensation that you can look into?
She looks considering for a moment. She says, "Oh, I haven't really thought about looking into sensations of the past. It goes a little bit against the spirit of sensation, but I bet I could. When you say here, this just house? Palace? Monastery? What would you call this?"
Manor, but I think just whatever you can manage. If you can just look in the space of this house and see if anyone experienced maybe fear, like extreme fear, or if you can look in Fermata at large and look for pain.
She sort of nods a little bit. She says, "Emotions are harder. They're not fully in the wheelhouse of sensation. Maybe that's why I don't understand them very well all the time." She gets kind of a slightly distant look, but then she goes, "But I think I can go room by room and look for pain or suffering." But she grabs Dosk by the back of the collar and goes, "I will need you for this. It's not fun to look at pain."
I'm sorry to ask that of you, but I appreciate it.
She shakes her head. She says, "No, I would like to help." And seems a little down, and then visibly tries to shake it off, and starts pulling Dosk, anime tsundere style behind her, as she troops off around the manor, trying to perceive pain.
So other than the fact that I'm in an anime and I'm now drawn with fewer lines as I get dragged around briefly, what's my part in this? Am I feeling anything as she's sounding for pain?
You have to assume that you are basically her heatsink. If she is unable to filter things out, she can, retreat into the sort of bubble of nothing that is your Arctoritas.
I keep my finger hovering on the trigger of nothing, like a sharpshooter at his holster.
So she troops around the manor for a good 20 minutes, figuring out the lay of the land and kind of peering, glaring around, and then she finally kind of shakes her head and looks at Dusk and goes, "No significant pain. Some interesting swirls of emotion, but they were hard to pin down." And then she looks one way and looks another, and then sort of leans closer and says, "But that servants' quarter or whatever it was that we saw 5 minutes back, it had the 2 of the attendants in it. Well, it wasn't pain. I'm not sure what it was. I don't know.
But
it was pretty pleasant, but weirdly uncontrolled."
I resist the urge to talk about uncontrollable pleasant things.
This is the point where if we were playing like a D&D system or something, I would make you roll to resist that temptation, but we are not, so... This is just me having a dig at
Does
D20.
Lissa have a craving?
Does Lissa have a craving? Was the question?
I have many cravings, but not of that variety.
Mechanically.
She does have a mechanical craving.
Yeah, that's what I was saying.
On the... the GM only character sheet. So it is up to Robin whether or not she wants to discuss it.
It is not of that variety.
Fair. I am briefly surprised both that Lissa resisted the urge to engage in some repartee, and at the implication that maybe this is something the nobilis of sensation would misunderstand or be bewildered by. If indeed we're talking about what we all seem to think we're talking about.
I mean, she is kind of a delightful knife.
Anyway, she sort of sighs, and Apatia says, "I'm sorry I couldn't be of more help, but I'm relatively sure that no one was murdered here last night, or at the very least, they were taken somewhere else before they were murdered."
I mean, that is helpful. We know that we don't necessarily have to scrutinize this house for bodies, I guess. I don't know. This is all very alarming. I just think it's a bad look that they went missing, and I want to make things right.
Hear, hear. Hear, hear.
So after a small interval of silence, you hear a voice you're pretty sure is Remush's from elsewhere in the manor, sort of cry out in alarm. Not sounding terrified so much as surprised, perhaps, but would I be correct in assuming that you then rush in that direction?
Yeah, absolutely.
You arrive in the hallway immediately outside of Remush's bedchamber to find that he is just letting go of the neck of an acolyte who he had pinned to the wall, sort of two-handed by the neck. He's, sort of backing up and being like, "I do wish they made some noise. What even are they?" The acolyte says nothing.
I address the acolyte first and ask if they're all right.
Timothy, how are you doing, buddy?
Acolyte looks sort of blandly nonplussed and simply bows towards you. and says, "This one was simply alerting Master Remush to the availability of breakfast, but this one seems to have surprised him." This one apologizes and bows toward Remush, and then starts serenely walking back down the corridor in the direction of the main dining hall. Seemingly none the worse for wear.
Perhaps in their silence lies the secret of their resilience. No harm done, I suppose, and breakfast is on besides.
Remush turns and says, "Yes, right. Thank you. I apologize. They are..." And as you sort of start moving toward the dining hall, he says, "What are they?"
We're not entirely sure.
His mouth sort of forms a pressed thin line, which is an expression that does not look especially at home on Remush's face. He's more of a, small, sardonic smirk kind of guy, as a sort of default expression. He says, "I hope I will not offend by saying that I find their company disquieting."
No offense taken whatsoever. Where they just kind of appear, they don't respond to any names, and they're not exactly good company for conversation.
And yet, I do. I would insist only that they represent a benevolent disquiet.
Agreed.
Remush says nothing in particular to that, but heads towards the dining hall. Now, this makes a pretty good interval to check in with Romnet. What are your particular aims for the morning, Romnet?
I mean, the usual sets of things. Get up, have coffee.
The important stuff.
Here ends the list.
Exactly. No, put on the usual ceremonial facade. Have more coffee, this time with breakfast. And probably head towards the manifestation, having heard nothing from the two of you about whether I might be needed on extraordinary business as opposed to very ordinary business.
Prophesying
Ordinary
and stuff.
and weird, it should be noted, are not the same axis of evaluation.
Indeed. On your way to the manifestation, you are intercepted by an acolyte who gently redirects you toward the manor, which of course is near the manifestation, so it doesn't make a huge disruption to your path or anything. But you find yourself seated at the Nobilis Manor dining hall breakfast table just prior to Remush entering with Dask, Apatia, and Lissa from one of the side corridors, and Ia coming in with a couple of attendants from the other sort of side of the breakfast hall. There are acolytes sort of setting a breakfast of breads, cheeses, sliced meats, maybe some fruit, although there isn't a ton of it in Fermata. They seem to find some for almost every morning meal, and it's not entirely clear where it comes from. Nor have you seen much livestock in Fermata, so you're not sure where the sliced meat comes from either. Or the dairy.
Best not to consider.
Or the flour. There aren't really crops here.
Soylent Green is made.
I asked them if they have any eggs.
The nearest acolyte bows and leaves the room, which you're not entirely sure whether that's a yes, but, if they come back with eggs, great. Ia looks at the departing acolyte like one would, let's say, a dog that just farted and then left the room. And says in sort of an undertone, "Please tell me the acolytes don't lay the eggs."
Oh, I don't. They wouldn't, would they? Would they?
I can't confirm that they don't, but there's no reason to believe that they do, I say, putting a bite of mystery meat in my mouth just after.
I shrug and proceed to pile all the meat and cheeses and fruit on my plate like a starving woman.
At this point, Dosk, it is likely that you notice that Romnet is seated at the table, sort of...
There is probably already more coffee in front of me.
Yeah, I was going to say, consuming coffee at prodigious rates.
I've probably only seen him do this a relative handful of times, so it still impresses me. But I say, "Good morning."
Good morning. I was redirected from heading toward my offices to join you, apparently.
Well, there's a matter you may be able to help with. I think I reveal what he told me, but I don't mention the bit that she may or may not know that we've learned through divination.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do I have any knowledge that may be useful here?
You're pretty much just up to speed at this point.
Okay.
Generally, in Fermata, in the last little bit, anybody who has gone any kind of missing has turned up later afraid of the dark.
I don't mention that.
As you're visibly not mentioning that, I say, any issue, large or small, that may occur in Fermata, Romnet is aware of it, and in fact, often equipped to solve it. So, we'll get this sorted.
I will just raise an eyebrow at him as if to suggest, "Really, my dear?"
Ia, meanwhile, nods somewhere between serenely and icily, and Rimush is making some kind of open-faced sandwich and not particularly giving much response otherwise as they sort of eat. In the small silence that ensues, thoughts percolate, but before anybody can make any particular sort of decision to act, the front door of the manor doesn't quite bang open. It's too big to be moved with that kind of alacrity, but swings wide, and everybody turns to see Evine coming in, flanked by two acolytes who are very conspicuously not pulling her by the elbows, but positioned so that she would have to pass within easy arm's reach of both of them to turn around. She is a little on the disheveled side, still dressed in kind of a dashing, casual version of Fermatan normal wear. Her hair is always a little bit artfully mussed, but in this case is, maybe a little less artful, a little more mussed. Some dark circles under her eyes, and it's at that point that those of you who have seen her before notice that her eyes are changed. They're the same kind of ice blue, her overall coloration being very similar to Ia's, light hair, dark skin, blue eyes. But the whites of her eyes are no longer whites, they are black. She's just got a ring of icy blue and an otherwise unbroken sort of sea of pupil black around her eyes, and she is frowning fiercely. She is not stomping into the room, but seemingly gritting her teeth to avoid doing so.
I think I turn to Yuvine and I say, if you've an urgent matter, let's discuss it urgently. And if you've not eaten, we have so much breakfast and so much coffee that neither Lissa nor Romnet has managed to exhaust our supply.
I toast her with my glass and say, Avine, a daydream incarnate.
What she said.
I will raise my mug at her and gesture with it toward our guests and introduce them all.
She sort of stands there, taking it all in a little bit wide-eyed and looking as though she would very much like to back out of the door were it not for the acolytes subtly preventing her from doing so. But especially upon being introduced to Ia and Rimush, she sort of gets a more interested look and slowly comes in and has a seat, starts putting together a plate, and she says, "Why, good to see you all. Good to meet you, esteemed nobilis. Is everything all right?"
Which answer do you prefer? We have 2 missing attendants of theirs that we have been trying to track down, and we're just trying to fortify our stomachs before setting out to find them.
She nods glumly upon hearing this and goes, "Aye, that sounds about right. Trust the big guy to make me mayor before everything goes to shit." As she says that last part, shoots a brief but very sharp glance in Romnet's direction.
I will raise an eyebrow at her as if to suggest, spit it out then.
She does not particularly acknowledge this expression and instead begins to shovel a slice of bread with about 3 inches of sliced meat piled on top of it into her mouth.
As one do.
I very visibly withhold my question until she is done shoving food into her mouth to avoid that awkwardness of just asking someone as they take a massive bite.
I fill the silence by beginning to ask the question at dusk length, which will give her plenty of time to chew. I explain that it would seem that that the issue is not news to her, but I would assume that she has a very different view of the problem, and we would welcome any input, any additional details. We've just begun to take in the details on our side of who's missing and when they went missing, and we mean to find them. That was probably sandwich length, right?
Yeah, she's more or less swallowed by that point. Was there anything else I was going to add there?
We've been gone a while.
She goes, "I have noticed. Not your fault, but poorly timed. I blame the big guy." She sort of shakes her head minutely and then says, "Apologies, esteemed guests. I have not slept very well. It's good to make your acquaintance, and I hope you find yourselves welcome in Fermata, and that you'll let us know if there's anything we can do to make your stay more comfortable and help you to accomplish your business." She rattles it off as boilerplate without actually looking directly at anyone. She basically keeps her eyes fixed on the table just on the other side of her plate. As she says it, sort of fingers on her forehead and temple. It doesn't seem like she's hungover, but she's kind of acting... Well, she said she didn't get much sleep. You know, that could be what this is. She sort of trails off a little bit. Ia and Rimush have said very little other than to sort of like nod and murmur niceties when they were introduced, and they now sort of like glance at each other and then Avine and back to each other, but don't say anything else. They are both eating, but very slowly and daintily. And sort of not much of any one thing.
Did you do something different with your hair or your makeup? You look radiant, although tired.
She goes, I have not done jack shit with either my hair or my makeup in God knows how long. Oh. She glances very briefly at Ramnet again, but doesn't maintain the glance and says, "Have you not been told anything?"
Anything about?
Not being told anything seems to be part of the job description.
Well, you got that right. Well, according to some people I've seen in my offices, as well as she gestures without looking in Ramnet's direction, some of what I've been told, we've got a bit of an epidemic in the city, not just of fear of the dark, which hopefully you're already aware of, but, well, people are changing, you see. She gestures offhandedly to her own eyes. Says, some don't seem terribly bothered, but others, well...
Others can't carry it off as well as you can.
She snorts and she says, as well as I'm carrying it off, I suppose. I guess that our prophet is not particularly bothered, given his striking aspect.
You can carry it off as well
again,
as
without
he can.
Really looking, gestures at his smoking void skull, and sort of purses her mouth a little bit.
I suspect that this is more self-inflicted than of external source.
Oh, yes. Would that we could all be so blessed by the obsidian god. She shakes her head a little bit and says, I'm sorry, it's hard to focus, but
does it
the riotous city is, well, it's not easy to look at people, I'll tell you that much.
Meaning your vision is occluded, or that you see things differently now?
She kind of shrugs one shoulder and says, differently, I guess. That silvery light didn't used to be so damnably bright. People didn't used to glow so much. Can't really tell what's there and what's not half the time. And she sort of glances offhandedly at Ia and, immediately freezes. Ia doesn't even seem to notice.
She's bright, isn't she?
Naveen goes, what? You're all very bright.
I make a conscious effort to dim myself miraculously, and then I also hold a hand out to her and say, can I help with the tiredness?
Real quick point of order, we'll get to you helping with the tiredness in just a moment. Would I be correct in assuming that Apatia was also part of the introductions when she came in?
Yeah.
I figured, just making sure. Apatia has been kind of watching all of this with a mixture of interest and confusion. As Yvine kind of nods wearily and extends her hand to Lissa's offer, Apatia sort of seems to have a little bit of a light bulb moment, anachronistic though the expression may be, and sort of closes her eyes and takes a deep breath and seems to tense for a moment, and then lets out her breath and says, I think that should help. And sure enough, actually, when any of our nobilis happen to glance at her, she is... You don't always perceive visually the glow of her spirit around her, but it's always kind of something you can sense, if you're paying any attention to it at all. Now it's barely detectable, but very muted. She seems to have masked it somehow. Lissa, you are doing what? A domain miracle creation?
Creation of furious joy.
All right. Well,
if the drill. Takes my hand.
She did. She didn't say anything, but she sort of took your hand. So that's Command Inspire.
Command Inspire. Okay. Oh gosh, where did I just scroll? Do I still have my master die?
Yes, you have rested a full night. You are maybe not like 100%, but you are no longer penalized.
Pair of twos.
Okay. Evine sort of like jolts a little bit and then rocks back and forth gently and sort of shakes her head and says, "Whew. That's a cup of coffee all at once. Thank you." And she looks a little clearer-headed, if no less kind of like rumpled and sour-faced.
I will inquire of Evine if I also have a shine. Because that seems unexpected.
She shakes her head a little bit and she says, No, there's just the silvery light. And she just gestures at everything. And I mean, here inside you have some lamps, but if you are looking, you can still see like the table is limned in that silvery light, the chairs, the people, the lamps themselves, any detail that it sort of stands out from the background of obsidian foundation has this faint silver limning around it that lets you kind of see in monochrome even without an artificial light. It's almost exclusively how people navigate out of doors in Fermata, where it's sort of a mild taboo to bring, open flames and external lights with you. One that the Light Word are challenging currently. But Evine indicates, no, it's just that little light is almost too bright to look at. I like to see my food when I eat it.
Truth and darkness at her.
Okay. Remind me of that one.
Just to see if it... she would use eerie instead of sight for purposes of seeing in dark places.
Okay.
Not sure, the effect as it would be here, but...
Yeah, height in minutes. So yeah, go ahead and roll your 6+ Master Dice pool.
Alright, so... we got no matches, so that is a pair of 10s.
Okay. Thank goodness for Master Dice.
Yep.
So...
I think that's my first sorcery
I think
roll
it is.
this campaign, too.
I believe so.
Despite how, thoroughly I've built my character at it.
Well, and that's actually something that I was kind of taking into account in the structure of the campaign, is that theoretically you were kind of starting from a place earlier in character progression than your character concept called for. Most of these sorceries would have been things that you had either gathered from before your time in Fermata or else were bestowed upon you when you became the Prophet, and you were just kind of waiting for XP expenditure to catch up to that. So it has been somewhat intentional on my part. This, I guess, maybe a little bit of a Dice Peaks prelude. In any case, your sorcery hopefully will come in handy more and more frequently as time goes on. In this case, though, you were just doing this rather than sort of like pitching it at her, right?
Yeah.
Okay. She
probably recognizes the trappings of how I do my magic, though. So.
Certainly, yeah. The school of magic that you use, I believe, tends to revolve around light and dark and wet and dry. So, there's probably a couple of verbal and what Dungeons and Dragons would call somatic components, as well as like a swig.
Honestly, I probably flick a couple of drops of coffee at her.
I like this a lot. She sort of flinches a little bit, and when she opens her eyes again, she sort of glances around and exhales and goes, "Not that I'm not grateful, Prophet, but what exactly did you just do?"
That should alter your means of seeing a bit, so that you're not relying solely on the silver light.
She looks a little torn and she says, "Is it permanent?"
Unfortunately, no. However, it is no terribly great effort on my part, so if it is helpful, come see me when you need it.
She nods slowly and she says, well, thank you.
Alternatively, we can discuss some manner of making it permanent.
She looks
with these two at some point.
She looks thoughtful and she says, "Well, it is helpful. It's very strange, but It's not unwelcome after all this time.
This is, I turn to Ian and I say,
takes a deep breath.
He's good at solving problems. This leads me to ask, those attendants who are fully accounted for, they are, I take it, all unchanged.
Yeah, quirks an eyebrow at you and says, as far as I know, yes, but we'll, when our meal is finished, call them in. You can inspect them, interrogate them. We'll look over them to see if there have been any changes.
Our apologies. We had no idea about the situation, as I hope you've inferred. I look back at Aveen and say, if I'm following things correctly, it seems we have groups of people who've become afraid of the dark and groups of people who can no longer tolerate the light.
She sort of shrugs one hand. She says, as far as I know, I'm the only person who's been having trouble with light. But there could be more. It's a big city. Not everyone comes to me.
What have been some of the other changes you've seen?
She sighs and leans back, looking at you, sustaining eye contact with you for the first time since she came in. Apparently her vision being more comfortable now. She says, well, I've seen webbed fingers and toes in more than one person. A few people have gotten quite a few shades lighter. One person's hair was slowly turning to feathers. A couple of other people have had their eyes changing, although none exactly like mine. One person's nose seemed to be sort of receding into their face. And one particular unfortunate had some sort of little nodules growing out of his neck. It's really odd. And pretty uncomfortable, I gather. She trails off, glancing briefly at Ramnet, and then sort of shakes her head and says, it's been a challenge, but, well, there's really only 2 members of civil government around here when you're gone, so the acolytes help where they can, but they lack a human touch, you know. And when she says that, Ia sort of like snorts her water very slightly and then very daintily wipes her mouth and says nothing.
Rumnut does approximately the same. Less daintily, less politely, but it still comes off because of everything as this is Rumnut still being polite about things.
Following that, all right, this is me having to resort to analogy rather than description again, something that frustrates my students no end. Have you ever been close to a power transformer that has exploded? It actually shakes the ground, yes. Right? Like you can feel the vibrations. It's like a very sudden percussive earthquake, albeit a small one. So if you can imagine those sort of sudden percussive slight tremors, just enough to rattle the silverware a little bit, fading quickly, but without the attendant ear-splitting explosion, that's more or less what happens as you're sitting here. There is this almost like impact thud and tremor, but there's no sound other than the tinkling of silverware and the shivering of glasses. And it's over almost as soon as it starts.
I jump out of my seat and run to the front door to see if I can see anything.
The ripples are dying away in the canals. The first time that you have seen anything but the wake of a gondola or the small sort of ripples left by somebody walking down or up the stairs to the other side of the city, or from the other side of the city, that the glassy, mirror-like stillness of the canals has been broken.
Having given up any pretense of looking like we know what's going on, in front of our esteemed guests, I point in the general direction that Alyssa's just gone to investigate, and I say, is that new?
You're asking your guests?
No. I'm simply not trying to appear to know what the fuck is going on with them. No.
I see.
I'm asking the one who is in charge while we're gone.
Evine just shakes her head, and Ramnet, you have not experienced anything like this in Fermata. You maybe experienced a small earthquake or two in your travels previously, but they're not like this, right? They ramp up and then back down.
It seem like an earthquake.
Yeah. This is almost more like what you would expect from something like a meteor impact. But again, no sound.
Can I divine whether there's an obvious source for it? Whether there is like a meteor that's touched down somewhere in Fermata?
So divining the source, and this actually conforms to what Lissa sees, looking out at the ripples on the canal. The center of this sort of soundless boom seems to have been the manifestation.
If you'll excuse us,
well,
I think there may be no surer. Sure is the wrong word. There may be no other way of solving this than speaking to the big themselves.
Rimush gets his little smirk back and kind of nods and says, "We will continue to enjoy your hospitality then." And Ia sort of, again, wiping her mouth kind of daintily, says, "Indeed, we will inspect our attendants for any deviations in their appearance while you investigate whatever that was." Evine, for her part, the entire time that Ia is speaking, basically just has like her head in her hands like this and tries to be like unnoticed.
I assume that Das comes out to...
I do. And this is maybe tabletop real quick. If we're going to talk to Mott, do we want to, or do we definitely not want to bring Apatia with us?
I think
she did follow Dosk.
Okay, I think we need to bring her.
Okay.
But I was going to say, too, Dosk probably finds me glassy-eyed for a moment, because I imagine my second reaction would have been to briefly jettison myself into Varric's mind, ensure that he is okay, and then return.
Varric is still asleep. He had a late night last night.
All right.
Well, so yeah, I convey the information that whatever that was, it came from the manifestation. I think the four of us, as Ramnet might be useful in interpreting what in Mott's name Mott might mean, the four of us should head over there at once.
And you say Mott's name out loud?
Probably without thinking, I do.
Yes.
All right. One moment.
What did you do?
Damn my love of wordplay.
Robin, you're going to hate me for this. Please roll Sense plus Sight.
Am I the only one rolling this?
Yes.
Oh, what is happening?
What did I do?
I got surprising no one. And no matches. I got a 3 and a 9 if it matters.
Okay. In this case, I don't think the waste dice matter at all.
Mm-hmm.
I guess that sounds aggro in this case. Waste dice in Rain are just dice that aren't part of a match.
It did sound a little aggro, but I figured,
Yeah, no, I knew what you meant, but I was mostly, I was gesticulating with my hand wildly because I don't know what's going on.
Right. Only a small part of me said, ooh, sick burn, waste dice.
Because that roll was terrible, I am going to implore Lady Luck to help me see. And
go ahead.
You're going to flirt with Lady Luck?
Do your reroll.
3 and 1, so still no luck.
Luck, if you eventually ever were a lady to begin with.
Your luck roll will pay off. Probably not in a sense roll.
Yeah.
If I had to guess. But
you really may want to either increase the pool or get you a master die.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's just the thing, right? Is that the sense rolls are not all in 1 or 2 skills. And so raising the stat makes the most sense. We have to save up 10 XP to raise the stat, so...
I'm aware. This is part of why I started with 4 cents.
Well, sure. That was not an explanation for your benefit, though.
There are, happily, other people listening.
But, exactly. And my explanation of my character can be directed to them as well.
Well, sure.
So the more I think about it, the more... Yeah, the playing around with Mott's name was a nervous habit, and there's plenty to be nervous about, so I own that bad decision. I can't justify in character making a better one.
Fair enough.
It was an interesting choice.
Yeah.
Dosk, Lissa, Apatia, and Romnet are all outside of the Nobilis Manor and looking at the canals and the manifestation variously. And I think the intention is to head into the manifestation. So just you set
really
off in that direction.
Clear,
it's a short walk.
Something happened when I said it, but we couldn't tell what, or we don't even know whether something happened. Okay,
this is my tight-lipped expression.
Yeah. You can't hear his expression, dear listener, but it is very, very tight-lipped.
I like to imagine
volume.
Yeah, I like to imagine that the silence, the quality of the silence for me suggested the expression that I was making.
It is of a very specific and of a very high quality.
So
Adam has lots of silence to go around.
Okay, we're heading over there. Didn't mean to break your flow.
You are fine. So it's a short trip to the steps of the manifestation. The Acolytes seem, for their part, unperturbed as ever. The most perturbed you've ever seen them is trying to harry Romnet into the manifestation to continue his oracular duties the other day when Lissa took over for him. But you ascend the steps. Manifestation itself is mostly empty. A couple of Fermatans, a handful of Acolytes. Not a lot going on. Would I be correct in assuming that you're heading down the stairs toward the well?
You would be correct.
As you head in that direction, Apatia sort of scrambles to catch up with you and is looking around the manifestation wonderingly and says, "It's very impressive, but it's weirdly numbing. It's like my eyes and ears have fallen asleep like my hand." She's sort of muttering rather than speaking out loud. Which makes it very hard to hear her, because as we've established, the whole manifestation is an antinode. Sound doesn't carry, it doesn't echo. You enter the door and head down the stairs. Apatia goes the whole way down, trailing her fingers on the wall, which is not exactly rough-hewn, but since the whole thing is obsidian, it still has small facets. And she seems to be trailing her fingertips across in silence. Eventually, you reach the bottom of the stairs and you emerge into the heart of the chancel. The well is in its customary spot. Dosk's little nook has gained some definition. It looks used now, right, where there are certain carved books and scrolls that are kind of out or open, and there are a variety of small trade goods kind of scattered about in a merchant's scales. Again, hewn out of obsidian, attached to the surface of the desk, all of one piece. Kind of there. It's less of a suggestion.
As opposed to attached to the surface of the desk.
Indeed. Where before it was more the suggestion of sort of an indeterminate workspace / document storage area, now it is pretty clearly some kind of combination personal library and mercantile office. Lissa's pillar is very interesting because the snake that was coiled around it before is coiled much higher and looser now, looking more in an aggressive posture, but the striking head of the snake has actually broken off, and the head, mouth open, fangs extended, sort of small, not exactly a frill like a cobra has, but sort of the flaring of the area behind the head is open, but that whole assembly is resting on the floor at the base of the pillar, upside down, with a clean, smooth obsidian break where it has separated from the body. There is only silence here, but it is a silence that seems to pulsate.
I try to put the snake's head back on, imagining that it just kind of got knocked off by the percussive explosion that we heard earlier, and call out like, buddy, are you in here?
So Alyssa walks over and says, buddy, are you in here? She reaches down to this snake's head. Alyssa, roll coordination plus dodge 4 dice.
Snakes can still bite when decapitated.
As we were discussing before
actually,
session.
Oh my bird. No matches, so I should have saved that luck.
Okay. Just one moment. I must now roll. Oh, dang it.
Bom, bom, bom.
Alright. You will take 1 shock damage to your... whichever arm has the head of the snake on it. I forget which one. I apologize, I did not look.
Oh, the tattoo, not the one I picked up the snake with. Oh gosh.
That is correct, yeah. I don't actually know that it's noted on your character sheet.
It should be. It's her main. It's her, I think she's right hand dominant, so I think that's where it is.
Okay. So the stone snake head, like in a blur of an instant, latches around your right wrist. The teeth actually overshoot. That's a big enough statue that even Lyssa's muscle forearm is not broad enough that it can't get the whole arm in its mouth behind the fangs, but it latches around your entire arm and squeezes until you feel it bruising, and then the whole thing crumbles into a black dust and slides to the floor. Apatia, for her part, is this whole time staring unresponsive at the well. As soon as she got clear of the stairs, her gaze settled on the well, and she is staring at it not in like a slack-jawed daze, but as one might stare at a motion-sensing predator. She is very, very still and unwilling to take her attention off of the well.
Ouch.
Fast, Gromnet.
I will ask Lyssa if she is all right. Having, seen some manner of kerfuffle.
So, the snake bit me, and now it's... What does this mean? I gesture wildly at the headless snake up on top of the column, and the...
Out of character. Double.
What does it mean? I also gesture to the kind of rubble where the snake kind of fell apart, favoring my hand.
It's gone.
Oh, the whatever, with the place where the snake dust used to be.
Yeah.
Before doing like
you
the
only notice when you
adventures.
gesture at it that it
So it
disappeared.
bit you, and now it is. But you are still. You feel like you, as opposed to.
Do I feel like me? Do I need to roll?
Yes. Yes, you do.
And it's going to be a sense roll, isn't it?
Uh-huh.
It was kind of essential.
Sense plus empathy is your best sense roll, though, so 3 dice.
I'm rolling horribly today. No matches.
I do feel that for what it's worth. It's part of the reason why I have defaulted to sitting in the GM's chair so much.
Let me just reach, like, these are, I'm changing out my dice. I'm going to roll the others and see if they want to cooperate with me.
You can go for it. I am, this is a very brief aside, reminded of the Call of Cthulhu character I played who failed sanity rolls so often that I leaned into it. And just started, trying to drive as crazy as possible.
Through GM entertainment value in that game, your character's sanity ended up being measured in absolute value.
Correct. I believe the GM's line to me was, your character is an embodiment of the idea of détente.
What are the odds of me rolling 10 dice and not getting a match? I'm asking for a friend.
I had a statistician in my house for a week, but he left, and I couldn't tell you off the top of my head.
If you're listening, anyone statistician wants to know in question, answers on a postcard.
Oh, gosh. If anyone wants to know what my luck looks like today.
I mean, it's going to be some manner of factorial.
Yeah. Bring ourselves back to the very dramatic moment that we have all collaborated to undermine quite effectively, myself included. Apatia is regarding the well with a sort of tense anticipation. Lissa is looking down at the place where the dust that used to be the snake head that fell off of the statue, seeming to represent her, used to be after it bit her. Scromnet, anything in particular?
I mean, I asked
whether she feels like
Correct,
her,
yes.
And I don't know that she
and that was the
capable
role
of answering. Yeah,
I think I'm okay.
Good, I think.
I think I feel like me. I am not usually one for symbolism, but that seems like bad news.
There's another one of those impact tremors, clearly originating from the well. Stronger here, you can actually feel it through the stone and the air. Apatia doesn't react.
Well, I'm glad you're you, now as ever. Maybe we need to get to the heart of this matter.
Yeah, this does not feel good.
So between Dosk saying the word heart and Lissa saying the word good, you detect a muted sound from the well. It is not Mott's voice, which seems to come from everywhere anyway, when Mott does speak. It sounds, well, like someone running, maybe? It's a little weird and irregular for that. But a moment later, a figure in a sort of V-cut short vest and kilt comes rocketing out of the well and does a very deft somersault and kind of lands in like a 3-point like superhero landing on the obsidian about 6 feet away from Lissa, who, due to walking to the snake, is the closest to the well. Apatia does not react. But what does everybody else do?
I am going to... Oh, crap.
I know what I do if you need a minute.
I'm going to do tackle.
Ooh.
And try to capture them. Realizing, A, that this is the missing person, so I'm thinking I need to stop them for their own safety. I have not yet registered that there might have been something nefarious to their presence in the well. But I do have gliding step, so that means that when I make a shove or tackle attack, my opponent doesn't get a +1 bonus on trip or slam attacks against me. And I don't have to beat the usual difficulty 3 when attempting this.
Okay. So that's Lissa is going to be attempting a body plus fight roll in just a moment. Dosk, your response was?
The first thing I think to do, probably in response to my craving, capital C, which is reckless curiosity. The first thing I do is, rather than doing anything useful, I divine whether the count of outsiders in Fermata has changed once this person appeared.
It has not. Miraculous actions taking precedent over mortal ones. I can go ahead and answer that. It has not.
I will ask who he is. Sort of, hi, who are you?
In the same moment that Lissa is.
But I'm just hurtling.
Yeah, Lissa is hurtling toward them. So as you are speaking, you realize that this person is actually an older woman, short by Taraxan standards, and stands out a lot, actually, among the Sirthim entourage. You don't remember seeing her in the original lineup in the plaza outside the manifestation yesterday. Most of them have darker skin tones. Hers is close to alabaster with just hints of pink undertones. Her hair is a narrow crest on top of her head that falls to about her chin. It's silvery white, and when she looks at Ramnet and then Lissa, you can see that her eyes are a uniform, almost pearlescent white. No irises, no pupils. Even the whites of her eyes are not like human whites. They're, well, almost mineral in appearance. She's got some sort of smile and laugh lines in her face as she sort of straightens up in time for Lissa's impact. So go ahead and roll your body plus fight 5 dice.
Thank you for letting me know I'm about ready to full on body an old woman.
You're welcome.
Also, you mentioned that
2 9s.
Finally, a good roll. Wait a minute. Oh, no.
2 9s, and
you mentioned that she was both in the Sirthan entourage, but also not increasing the outsider count.
She is dressed like the Sirthan entourage was dressed. None of you remember seeing her before, and Dosk has not shared this information yet, but her emergence from the well has not changed the count of non-Fermatans in the city.
We don't know, though. I mean, and again, I haven't shared this yet, but quick table talk, I suppose. We don't know whether that means in the well counts as in Fermata, or whether she's not actually an outsider.
So, 2 9s. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Lissa. You are 6'7", 240 pounds.
Yes, I'm aware. Thank you.
I enjoyed watching Robin's reaction to me enumerating that. This person's NPC character sheet says they are 5'4", 140 pounds.
Ooh.
Mm.
And looks like she's maybe in her 50s, maybe her late 50s.
In my defense, most of this information did not come after the split-second decision to tackle her.
Indeed.
The record shows.
Yeah, you are more than a foot taller and not too far shy of double her weight. You glide step in and you commit. You are like an all-star American football player going in for the dive tackle.
I'm so sorry.
You will...
You can't see it, Lissa, but I'm saluting you.
Your dominant arm is your right.
Yeah.
You will take 3 shock damage to your right arm as you impact her with your shoulder, and she does not even move.
Oh, so what does it mean when the damage has exceeded the number of,
I am glad you asked. One of your shock turns to killing.
Yeah. Let's not lose my arm.
Yeah, for listeners at home, if Lissa takes either 2 more shock damage to her right arm or 2 more killing damage to her right arm may very well be lost entirely.
Well then.
Lissa, you have a moment as you are airborne approaching this woman. where you feel a ghostly sense of an Octoritas roll over you. It's not as strong as you're used to.
In the moment I see the physical impact have an effect I certainly didn't expect, my curiosity gets the better of me again, but I perhaps direct it in a more interesting or more useful way. And I look at this woman, not with my eyes, but with the sight. What do I see?
Good question. I will need you to roll Sense plus Scrutinize 4 dice. As always, looking with the sight is a miraculous action. It's actually an aspect miracle, but it's a level 0 aspect miracle. And that happens regardless, but your Sense plus Scrutinize will help you make sense of what you see.
That is no matches. So maybe no, it won't.
Y'all need to get better sense.
So, looking at this woman with the sight, you just see her mundanely there, but if you can imagine the visual equivalent of, like, scratches in a vinyl record, that's kind of the effect that you get from the sight, although, again, my penchant for analogical descriptions is maybe not helpful here, because it's not like you're seeing scratches on vinyl, you are sensing them with spirit like you would sense the sound with your ears.
So he's hearing scratches on vinyl in a visual sense.
I'm seeing what scratches on vinyl sound like. But even that's wrong. Yes, I follow.
But not with your eyes.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Because none of this is actually synesthesia.
Well, we had a whole synesthesia side story, basically.
It's the challenge of describing a sense that mortal humans in the real world do not have.
Right. Okay.
So, this is all the information that you can glean in one round. Round 2 actions.
Am I going... What's the order?
Order is determined by miraculous actions first, highest miracle level takes precedence, and then width of rolls for mortal actions.
Before we do round 2 actions, did she answer when Ramnat asked who she was, or was she a bit distracted by having Lissa dive into her?
By bodying Lissa?
A little bit distracted by having Lissa collide with her like an egg collides with a steel trench plate.
The stone hits the pitcher, or the pitcher hits the stone. Bad for the pitcher, yeah.
Oops. I thought it was going to be far worse than that, so I'm conflicted.
Who was the pitcher and who was the stone, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I am going to do a lesser creation of fury in the obsidian beneath this individual's feet. Because at the very least, there's something uncanny going here. So the first step in my mind, ringing as it is to make sure she can't go anywhere. So I'm going to try to get the obsidian mad enough to hold her, because it's been violated in a way.
Okay, all right. This is a command inspire to get the right kind of fury. And you do have a master die there, yes. But we're going to make you roll anyway to get the height.
4 and 2 4s.
Okay. The obsidian below her feet gives way. At about the same time that she reaches out and just puts her thumb and middle finger on the back of your neck and lifts you up by the base of your skull in one hand to hold you facing her as she studies your face. Actions from Dask and Ramnat.
I'm trying to figure out the logistics of how someone short. I guess I'm
does the arm
kind of
extend?
Still touching the ground. Yeah. Did she?
No, the arm does not extend.
Did she miss his fantastic?
No, your toes are definitely still dragging on the ground. You're just being bodied. Like you have not had an opportunity yet to try to get out of this, because you were doing a miraculous action while she was doing a miraculous action. These are simultaneous.
Mm-hmm.
But chances are you could try to like stand up and push yourself back next round.
Okay.
As I'm seeing this, I say perhaps we should start again. Hello. Who are you precisely? And I'm Dusk, Dusk Tier, Regal of nothing. Hello. It's probably about that.
And
what I say.
Yeah, Romnet, your action for this round.
Take out a bowl and a flask of water and start pouring the water into the bowl.
All right.
I imagine that's approximately an action.
I assume this is in preparation for a spell, although enough of your spells
Clear
involve
Water Oracle, yeah, which has a 6-minute cast time. So
gotcha. Yeah, so you're going to be doing this for a minute.
Well, then I'm glad that I spent my turn trying to distract this person.
So, Dusk, your roll is going to be Charm plus Graces or 5 dice.
For me. I mean, let's see if it does. That is a pair of 1s. Actually, it's a pair of 7s. It's good to know that whatever this thing is, Striking Sad Boy works on it.
What does Striking Sad Boy not work on?
We'll probably find out someday, but we haven't yet.
Don't tempt Adam.
Anti-emo bigots.
Well, they don't matter.
No, we don't. We don't harbor them here.
And it's not like we've encountered any in this campaign yet, so...
Ramada's not very hospitable to them.
Indeed not. As this woman holds a surprised Lissa up, and Romnet begins to prepare a spell, Dusk, you try to start over, and her head swivels toward you. She looks a little perplexed for a moment, but does not respond verbally in that immediate instance. So, I would like to hear what our intentions for actions in the coming round are, so that we can put them in order. Robin, you look as though you had a revelation.
I am briefly consulting the rule book to determine whether or not a certain entity has a Octoritas or not.
Mm-hmm.
So give me a moment.
All right.
Drew, if you have something pressing, I guess like the first, I could go ahead and say my intention is to obviously get out of her grip as best I can, holding one hand up because my right arm is all but useless, and saying, apologies, we had some people go missing, but I see now that you're not one of them. Usually this is the point where I'd offer a drink.
Is this going to be a fascinate roll?
Yes, it is.
Okay, all right. So Lissa's making a fascinate roll. Dusk.
Yeah, I'm attempting to simultaneously free myself from being lifted, which is a very strange experience for me. And oddly attractive.
Yeah, I was going to say, how does that make
weird and tingly?
Confused.
It is a uncontrollable. What was the phrase earlier for that a patient used? No, I'm joking.
Well, okay. While giving Lissa the space to work through that via my conversation, while I wait for a response, I perform a lesser creation of nothing directly behind me, so that whatever Romnet is working on will not be seen while he works on it. It would appear to someone looking at me that I was just standing in front of nothing in particular, no Apatia, no Romnet, just the rest of the manifestation.
And Romnet is continuing to prepare Clearwater Oracle.
Until you let me know that it is time for me to roll.
Okay. It will be a moment.
Of course. It will be 6 minutes.
Indeed. Okay. So let's get that fascinate roll. from Lissa.
Yes. Refreshing my memory on. Yes. Okay. So it'll be 5 plus a master die.
Mm-hmm.
I'm very fascinating.
Mm-hmm.
Ooh. Okay. So I got a pair of 8s from that roll, so I'm going to make it 8s in triplicate.
All right. So you sort of make your attempt to be like, hey, we should start over, while you're sort of like wriggling to free yourself, and you are pretty much powerless to get yourself out from between this woman's 2 fingers until she like sort of relaxes them a little bit. She doesn't like let go, but she lets off enough pressure that you are able to sort of regain your feet and stagger back a little bit, and she stands there kind of glaring. Glaring is maybe an overstatement, but regarding you imperiously. She is standing in front of the well. Between the well and Lissa, Dosk and Robnet are a little ways further off. Apatia has not moved this entire time. She is still sort of regarding the well as though she expects it to bite her at any moment. The woman slowly lowers her hand to her side and sort of scans her eyes across everybody in the room and says, "Let me pass."
I don't think we're entirely against the idea, but we may have a few questions first, if that's all right by you.
She looks somewhat confused and says, "You have to take it up with Sirta," and starts to walk toward the stairs.
Do I have an action right now?
Sure. Yeah. I brought us out of action order because everybody was kind of like poised, but if you have something you want to do, we'll get right back into it.
Paradoxically and impossibly, the distance between where she is and the stairs is infinite. She will not arrive. This is a lesser creation of nothing.
Yeah.
Because
she can walk as much as she likes, but she won't get there.
Okay. Any other actions in this particular round?
I probably gesture to her and then down to the well and then to her and say, it was you were doing what down there? Is Mott? Made a poor choice again, but I would try to get the big they them to respond.
Sure. So she does not give any particular attention to what Lissa is saying. She's walking more or less toward Dosk and Romnet, who are sort of standing nearer the stairs, if not like directly on a line. And as she realizes she's not gaining ground, she begins to run. And then she increases her speed to well past what you have seen any human being be able to do. And then increases her speed again to beyond what you think physical bodies are capable of under normal circumstances. And yet stays more or less in the same place. She stops. She glares around the heart of the chancel. She has not yet said anything in particular since telling you to take it up with Sirtha.
In the absence of Sirtha, we would prefer to speak to you.
She takes a deep breath, coming to a stop, which again is no different from her running full tilt, other than her motion, and she says, "I am afraid I have nothing to say to you.
Are you here with Ia and Ramush?
Her eyes flick to Lissa, but she says nothing.
If we were to let you pass, where would you go?
She says nothing.
I'm going to go over to the well and look down it.
Okay. Roll sense plus sight.
I love it.
I'm sorry, that's what you're doing.
I mean, it was intentionally not a strong stat for comedic value,
Yeah.
but now it just is biting me repeatedly in the rear because no matches. A 0, a 10, and a 5.
Okay. I mean, it looks like a perfect hole of blackness. You have silver lining around the outside of the well, and then it's almost just matte black all the way down.
Can I use the...
Is it matte black all the way down?
It's Black 3.0. Anish Kapoor could not look into this well.
So we know we're not dealing with Anish Kapoor here.
Can I divine if Vought is okay?
Interesting. It's like checking if the ground is still there. You get a very unhelpful... Yeah?
When I used the sight on our new friend, did I get a sense of her brightness, of how much of an Octoritas we might be dealing with?
Nope. You seem to be at something of an impasse.
We do at that.
Let me know when I get to roll.
Time is ticking over.
Would I know that? I know Rom that is up to something. Would I have any way of knowing how long it'll probably take him? Yeah. Okay.
Not without him telling you.
I'm going to turn my attention away from the well without really getting much of an answer, and that's kind of standard behavior for the big them.
Right.
I'm gonna look at this lady and say, "What if we walk with you?"
She turns impassively towards you and says, "I suppose I don't really have much of a choice, do I?" Gesturing at the unbroken ground in front of her that stretched infinitely before her moments ago.
It's not, I'm a big proponent of choice. I just did put the wrong foot forward in more ways than one just now because there's a lot going on and there's stuff going on with the statue and it's been a little bit overwhelming, but if you want company on a walk, and I kind of go and stand amicably next to her, but pointedly out of immediate arm's reach.
Yeah. She glances at you and sighs a little bit, and she says, "Foolish of us, I suppose," under her breath, and then sort of louder, intending to be particularly heard, says, "Since my egress from this chamber is barred by your presence, and there is," glancing at Romnet, "only one of you that I could truly kill here, I suppose I must let you escort me out. But no, you are not supposed to be here."
I can't think of anywhere we are more supposed to be, and the only way that we would bar your choosing would be if we thought you were putting someone for whom we were responsible in danger. This with a very slight gesture toward Romnet. So, if walking together is a peaceable option, we would certainly prefer that.
Gives you a very strained smile. And a small nod. Now, Romnet, at this point, you may roll for Clearwater Oracle.
So that is, again, 6 and a master die.
Mm-hmm.
Because my character is a bit optimized at times.
A tad.
So that is a total of 4 sevens with the master die.
Very well.
Nice.
All right. So you are
so Clearwater Oracle
rolling 4 dice to determine what it is that you can divine.
Indeed. No, it's equal to the set height.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So
yes, not the set
dice.
width. 7 dice. You were rolling 7 dice. My mistake.
So I'm trying to get a view of one target person's future, that being our unknown stone lady. And that is 4 9s.
4 9s. All right.
See where all the rolling
Let
luck
me see
went
if
this
I can
session.
Find
Mhm.
this.
I'm not complaining.
I optimized.
Yeah, all good.
Yeah, it is certainly.
A rising tide raises all.
Me play an observant mage with social
Who'da
skills.
thunk?
Well,
Never been done before.
That is very unusual for you.
there's a first and also a sixth time for everything.
Indeed.
Okay. So you had 9s,
Yes.
which means that you learn about a conflict, and you had some waste dice.
Yes. 2 3 7.
Weather, misfortune, and a vehicle.
That's oddly specific.
There are rules, actually.
Yeah, I like the way
Clearwater Oracle is kind of a cool spell.
Yeah, I like the way that Rain handles magic in general, because, you can recreate an effect, but you have very little control over it beyond the casting. So, you see... I'm assuming you are divining about this woman who came out from the well, correct?
As I said, our stone friend.
But not actually stone, I want to make that clear. Just immovable and very, very pale for a Sirthan, which is what she is dressed
exhibiting
as.
stone-like properties, but not stone, as far as we can surmise. Not the stone guest in metaphorical terms only.
You see her in Fermata as all of the light, silver limning, and lamps, torches, candles, things like that, go out. You feel that there is some sort of conflict taking place within this darkness, and when you are able again to see something in the water, you are seeing 3 sailing ships, 1 of a familiar Charaxan design and 2 of an unfamiliar design, struggling with a whirlpool.
It's my boy.
Get you a man who can
Thank
do
you for
both.
that.
I mean, I was just thinking, leave it to Lissa to take it upon herself to raise Charybdis. Baby Charybdis.
So, I think that's the extent of the information that you get in your water gazing as this woman sort of approaches where Dask is standing, having agreed to be accompanied up from the heart of the chancel.
I will ask her why she seeks to take the light.
She gives you an extremely kind of it verges on a 90s Valley Girl look, like a what? Sort of eyebrow. And she says, "What fool would think they could take the light?"
If no one has any other ideas, I suppose that we would start to walk with her from the manifestation. If they're at the first sight of any acolyte, I'm going to have them go fetch our visitors.
Okay, so first things first, Apatia makes no move to follow you as you leave the Heart of the Chancel.
I walk over to her and I touch her on the shoulder, see if I get a reaction.
She immediately, relaxes would be the wrong word, but you realize when you touch her that her whole body was, straining tense, and she sort of, stops doing that and is simply, on alert and whirls to face you, glances back very briefly at the well, and then, sort of throws herself at you and wraps her arms, around your ribs under your armpits, and kind of, holds on to you.
I return the squeeze while attempting to make progress toward the stairs.
She is small enough that you are able to do so. She is sort of clinging to you, but is not... she's not, shaking or crying, but she's also, pretty intense about, using you as a piece of, flotsam or driftwood to sort of cling to.
I say, we'll keep each other safe. If it's any consolation, my meeting your goddess wasn't exactly easygoing either.
She gives one brief nod, an acknowledgement of you having said this, and no further response. And you begin up the stairs as a group. As you emerge into the manifestation, Apatia finally sort of starts to relax and walk under her own power, although she keeps two hands on one of Dosk's arms, as she sort of seems to come back to herself some. The woman who came out of the well is walking straight-backed, head high, gaze straight ahead, purposefully bordering on imperiously.
Where is she walking?
Toward the entrance to the manifestation.
And there's already an acolyte on the case, right? Is there? Were any of the acolytes present?
As you emerge from the stairwell into the manifestation, you can grab an acolyte to run ahead, yes. How much they will actually precede you by is anyone's guess. They are.
I emphasize that it's a matter of urgency for the sake of Fermata.
The acolyte power walks. Seems to be their maximum pace. So, you are exiting the manifestation. You can see the acolyte that Lissa dispatched power walking along the canal over to the manor as you keep pace with your prisoner ?
We don't use that word around here. It's a companion.
Guest who cannot go very far from us. That's all.
You're very tense fellow traveler. As you approach the manor, you can watch the acolyte go in, the door close behind them, and then you can see Rumush come out on the steps and watch your approach with sort of a stony look. As you come into conversation range with Rumush, he sort of looks up and down the woman who came out of the well and says, "Melis, why are you here?" She gives him a tight-lipped smile and says, "Where else should I be?" He frowns. and she fills the silence by saying, "Will we not move this inside?" And starts up the steps without waiting for a response. Ramush glares at her, but steps aside.
I give a sympathetic, tight-lipped smile to Ramush and say, "I see she's a surprise to you as much as she's a surprise to us. She was in the manifestation in more ways than one."
He looks a little puzzled and then looks over at the manifestation and says, "Yes, well, she was not supposed to accompany us." That is Ramush's in-character sigh as he turns around and heads into the manor.
We follow him when he turns on his heels, I think. And I say, we'll rely on you entirely for context, social and otherwise. We could hardly get a word from her, not even her name.
He nods, still very displeased looking. Entering the dining hall, which is not the entrance hall, but is sort of the next big room from the entrance, you see that Ia is in there. All of the attendants who were in the manor this morning are sort of in a kneeling kind of waiting posture along one wall as she walks up and down the line, peering at them and occasionally sort of lifting and turning her head this way and that as she sort of inspects the remaining attendants. When you come in, she looks up and sees the woman from the well sort of lead following Ramush, and she gets just kind of a faint tightness around her jaw and temples before turning back to the attendants and seeming to leave this in Ramush's hands. Very little is said during all of this, though it is possible that you will have noticed Evine's absence.
I will inquire of the nearest acolyte.
What are you inquiring?
Where Evine is?
That.
Okay. Yeah, sorry, I was waiting for the end of the sentence. The acolyte sort of looks at you and then just gestures at the door leading out into the city.
I will look at the acolyte with my usual look of frustration and not actually disgust, because that would not be polite.
The acolyte is impassive in the face of this withering glance.
I get more coffee.
While you do that, Ramush leads the woman from the well to sit down along one side of the dining hall table while Ia continues her inspection. Are our Fermatans taking any particular action, or are we content to hang back and see what Ramush does?
I have a multi-part action, probably.
Alright, go for it.
I'm probably going to send an acolyte, kind of point at my arm and then point out in the direction of the city and give them a very winsome smile as a silent thank you, because I don't want to draw attention to this business that's going on with my right arm being in very bad shape. But at the same time, I know that I should probably have someone come look at it. And then I'll probably edge over to where he is.
All right. The acolyte that you address gives you a deep bow and moves at their standard pace out into the city.
I whisper a thanks, Timothy, as they leave.
No particular acknowledgement of that. You move over near Ia, where she is inspecting her attendants. They are all very still, very silent, and as far as you're aware, unchanged. Dusk?
I'm once again running interference for Lissa as she does what she does, and I'm telling the woman from the well to make herself at home, and I'm commenting on Ia's inspection and saying that all seems to be well, at least as far as these individuals go, and offering reassurances, and basically playing the good host.
Okay. And Ramnat? Any particular action, Des?
Not currently.
Okay. That is very well. So, the thing that settles in for the next few minutes is Ia, with Lissa sort of nearby, finishing her inspection of their attendants, those that remain. The woman from the well, Melis, sitting at one side of the dining table, and Remush sort of pacing behind her and occasionally muttering something. Melis does not give any particular response, just sort of stares straight ahead, and Remush sort of pacing behind her, muttering. You realize fairly quickly that he is no longer speaking Taraxan. The language that you hear seems fairly monotone and rhythmic, though he can load an impressive amount of ire behind it, and he very seldom looks at Melis. Finally, he sort of comes to a stop, finishing his statement, question, you're not entirely sure, by gripping the back of the chair that Melis is sitting in. And she doesn't look at him, but hands flat on the table in front of her, sort of staring at the space in between them, gives a brief, tight-lipped smile and utters a short sentence in the same language that...
Can I try to use knowledge plus lore to figure out some bit of what they're saying?
You may. Whatever it is that she just said, Remush sort of throws his hands up and starts pacing again. And neither of them says anything else in the near term. Ramnat, go ahead.
Are there any modifications to my roll?
No, but I will say that you are probably not going to get too much even from a successful roll.
I mean, that's fine. Paravates.
If I do the same, can we compare notes?
Probably not in front of other people.
No, but later. Let's say we were both listening,
Yes.
and we can decide later how much we heard.
Yeah.
I'm assuming my master die in Taraxan does me no good, but knowledge plus lore for me would be 7 dice.
Yep. You guys can roll your various lores.
That is 3 4s.
Okay. So, both of you come to a similar conclusion that this is neither a relative of Taraxan, or, in Dusk's case, very dissimilar, in fact, from Diamok. And from what either of you know of the languages spoken beyond the Shadowed Lands, this maybe has a little bit more in common with that language, but it is not the language that most Taraxan sailors sometimes encounter if they sail beyond the Shadowed Lands. Ramnat, you actually draw a little bit of a comparison to the language spoken by the nomads who trade across the Caroline Wastes in the southeast of Taraxis, sort of inland near where it's coldest. Is a dry, cold desert, the Caroline Wastes. There are some small shipments of luxury goods that come in through there in these overland caravans, and those traders speak a language that is not entirely unlike this one, but you're told, at least, that it is tonal in a way that this is most certainly not. as for the sense of what's actually being said, you don't really get any more than just kind of the general dynamic that I conveyed before.
The emotional register, is clear enough.
Indeed. Having finished this little exchange, Rimush sort of pinches the bridge of his nose and then turns to Dask and Lissa in particular and says, once again in Taraxan. So yeah, Rimush sort of like pinches the bridge of his nose and says to you in Taraxan, this stowaway has taken it upon herself to scout what seem to be sensitive parts of your chancel. I will make arrangements to have her expediently returned to Cirtha for discipline from our god himself. Melis snorts at this without turning or looking at anything but the table between her hands, and he says, "You have my apologies, however, for the disruption." And he bows very low compared to how you have seen him before, almost level with the floor, holding it for only a moment before standing up again.
Maybe discipline seems a little harsh. I'm sure we could come to some understanding, because admittedly when I saw her dressed in the clothing of your attendants...
He cuts you off with a gesture and a no. Cirtha has spoken. Apologies for any disrespect, but our god will handle this. Thank you for your concern. And slowly unclenches his fist.
We don't mean to interfere in matters that are not our business, but we do prefer mercy, and we do require clarity.
We're not sure what she did, and there looked like there was some property damage.
As well as... I don't finish that thought, but I do glance at Lissa's injured arm.
So, Dask, give me a Grace's roll, please.
Yeah, sure. That is how many dice?
That's 5. Unless you would rather that be an Intimidate with you being requiring and all, in which case it'd be 4 dice.
I think it's Grace's. I think the in your opinion, Hollyhock God, is the threat veiled enough that this still counts as Grace's?
It's less about what it counts as and more about the effect you're trying to get from.
No, I'm trying to get cooperation. I'm not trying to cow him. So
then Grace's.
That is a pair of 8s.
Okay. He sort of makes a slightly abortive explanatory gesture and then looks at his hand front and back and lowers it slowly to his side and says, Melis has not been forthcoming about what it is she hoped to accomplish, but it is clear that she has disrupted our delicate first negotiations between prideful imperators, and for that, Cirtha will handle her punishment as he sees fit. The last part of that sentence is said as he regards Melis from the back of her head. And he turns to regard Dask again and says, you may prefer mercy, but we, dealing with discipline of our own, allow mercy to be at Cirtha's discretion. Have you ever... He sort of closes his eyes and takes a breath and then starts over and says in a milder tone, have you ever been in a desert?
Point of fact, have I?
Yes.
Very few people who have not traveled extensively beyond Taraxis would have been. Romnet, you might have spent some time on the edges of the Carolyn Wastes.
I will happily say that yes, that happened.
I don't know. So my honest answer would probably then be that I've heard a lot about them, but I've never been. I don't say that. I just let Romnet's answer stand.
Sure. Rimush's face turns toward Romnet and says, "And you will know that it is a relatively harsh place. Scorching in the daytime, freezing at night, the sun and the moon taking their turns to pummel the body. You see, the desert is where the cosmic forces that influence our world have the most direct sway. No significant plants or animals or weather systems to come between us and them, just a thin layer of atmosphere and nothing else. This should tell you something about Sirta's nature and ours." Ia, while he's saying this, has turned from her line of attendants and come up. She sort of places a hand, seemingly somewhat gently, on Rimush's shoulder, but uses it to sort of pull him back a little bit and take precedence. And she says, "What Rimush means to say is that Sirtha is perhaps less distant than your very own obsidian god, and takes an active hand in what his nobilis do. Like the light of the sun, his will is clear and uncompromising." And as she says this, she moves up to where Melis has been sitting and sort of rests 3 fingers on Melis's shoulder. Melis, her hands on the table in front of her, sort of tense a little bit. Her fingers arch, but her expression doesn't change. Her gaze doesn't waver. And Ia, looking at Melis, says, "And so, Sirta has spoken. Make a... I'll give you guys a choice between coordination plus dodge and sense plus sight. You can choose one of those to roll. Let me know what your results are."
I'm going to go with coordination plus dodge.
Yeah, same.
All right.
For obvious reasons.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm taking the curiosity route. Also, the better pool.
Fair
no
enough.
matches.
Sense
That's
of sight.
4 for Lissa, 4 for Dosk, and 5 for Ron.
Dosk got a pair of 7s.
I got nada.
Okay.
Same.
Nothing. The dice and I are not one today.
I've had a very half and half day. I've had some excellent rolls and some not so excellent rolls.
I've only been rolling with strong pools.
Mm-hmm.
The key to a great improvisation is not to improvise.
What was your result there, Romnet?
Pair of 7s as well.
Pair of 7s as well. Okay. So, Dosk, you seem to get a little intimation of what is about to come, and before you can really respond to it, your body sort of protects you. Throw an arm up in front of your eyes. Lissa, you're a little bit slower about this, and so you find yourself lying on your back blinking, and the skin on your face feels a little tender, and if you touch it, it sort of is a little flaky and crispy. Take a shock damage to your head.
Oh.
You would also take a shock damage to your torso, but you are constantly wearing a blacksmith's apron, so...
Lissa's having a bad day.
Yeah, really.
Yeah.
I mean, I chose to watch rather than dodge, so, woo!
Also have an interesting advantage here in that you do not have corporeal eyes. So You will actually also take a shock damage to the head from looking. But
Sure.
what you see is in the space of maybe half an eye blink, Melis's body flashes with the light of the sun as though you were looking directly into it. And the walls of the dining hall actually seem to crack. There has never been anything this bright in Fermata. The whole place seems to rebel against it. You see Lissa tumble backward, trying to avoid seeing this. And as soon as you can blink, wiggle your eye smoke until the after images are gone from your sight, Melis, the chair she was sitting on, and the floor immediately below her are just a little pile of ash and slightly glowing obsidian. The place where her hands were on the dining table are charred in, about half an inch down. Ia steps back, seemingly completely unfazed.
Ouch.
And that's where we'll end our session.
Well spoken.
So everybody can get 1 mortal experience point.
Do I get is that different for me because I was indulging my craving a fair bit? I guess there were other things to be curious about, but
well, and so indulging your craving means that you can get bonuses on rolls to indulge your craving, and if it was a problem, if it worked against your interests in the session, you can get a bonus XP. Do you feel that pursuing your curiosity worked to make problems for you this
I think we
session?
had plenty of problems without my doing that, so probably just 1 point this time.
Okay. So, that is the end of our plot here, concluding this session of Dice Punks. Thanks for joining us. I hope our players and listeners enjoyed it as much as I did, although for this one in particular, that seems somewhat unlikely. I enjoyed it quite a lot, and it would be hard to equal it, I think. But hopefully there was enjoyment to be had. I do hope that you'll all join us again next time. And if you're hearing us now, then you probably know where to listen to this, but we can be found almost any place that one can listen to podcasts, as well as on the wider web at dicepunks.com and on Twitter as @dicepunks. With that, I think we're ready to say farewell. Say goodbye to the kind folks at home, players.
Thanks for listening, and may your acts of diplomacy go better than ours.
Thanks for listening, everyone, and I hope Lady Luck is smiling on you more than she's smiling on me.
Thank you for listening. And remember, if you have eyes, don't use them to look into the sun.
Well, there's a song I could have pulled for this, but instead, as the poet once said, now one of us must die, but the killer won't survive.
Thank you, dear listeners, for tuning in, and stick around through the admin stuff. Lissa's got a metallurgical line waiting for you at the end of it. The songs in this episode, theme of the Dice Punks and its acoustic version, were written and recorded by the Regal of Nothing himself, Drew. Cover art is by Joanne, who has appeared on the podcast now and again. You should check out her work around the internet, where she goes by Anything Sews Embroidery. Site design and graphics for dicepunks.com are by Robin, the player behind Lissa, the irrepressible Duchess of Fury. Rain and the one-roll engine it runs on were created by Greg Stolze, whose work can be found in a frankly astonishing number of cool places, but I'll point you toward gregstolze.com. Nobilis was created by Jenna Caterin Moran and can be found alongside much of her other really intriguing work both in and outside of tabletop role-playing at afarandsunlessland.wordpress.com. Links to both systems and authors can be found on the Punk Grimoire section of our website, dicepunks.com. Thank you so much for listening. If you liked what you heard, well, that's reward enough on its own, really, but if you're so inclined, you can help us out by rating and reviewing us wherever you listen to us, telling your friends who you think would like us to give us a listen, and even by heading over to our Patreon at patreon.com/dicepunks. We have fun rewards available for backers, including a patron-only Discord and access to the Dice Peaks After Show for episodes 1 and following. Regardless, we hope you'll tune in again, and until then, remember, subtlety is for cowards.
So, metal is a fascinating medium. To wield it takes strength and patience and a fair amount of heat tolerance. No matter how soft or how firm the metal is, it all has a unique property in common. When bent, the metal releases energy, and the result is metal becoming heated. I was explaining this to a novice blacksmith once, and their eyes were as bright as the furnace. I could tell that it was the result of the forge mistress as much as the forge. So I told them that they, too, had metallic properties, and invited them to see how hot they became when bent against my form.